The soul must descend into Hades before it ascends to Olympus. Eleusinian Mysteries. They never told you what spiritual awakening actually feels like. It's not love and light. It's breakdown, isolation, crushing realizations. You wake up and the whole world starts to look like a lie. The pain, real. The confusion, overwhelming. But you're not alone, because when your soul begins to crack open, the gods take notice. This video is for those who are awakening, and for those who feel like they're breaking instead of rising. You are not being punished. You are being remade. No soul awakens by accident, and no awakening happens without pain. In ancient Egypt, awakening was the path of initiation into truth. The initiate was stripped of illusion, forced to walk the path of Ma'at, divine order, even through chaos. He who would rise must descend into the Duat, for in the darkness, he becomes divine. Temple of Edfu inscription. In ancient Greece, it was the Delphic oracle that warned, "Know thyself, and endure the fire of truth, lest you return to the shadows." In the Vedas, awakening was never soft. The soul, caught in slumber, must be shaken by fire and storm. From this pain, it returns to Dharma. Rig Veda. The moment your eyes open to the lies of the world, you become a danger to the system, and the gods protect those who step into this fire. But it is earned, not handed. Most people will never awaken. They will die as sleepwalkers. They will never ask why they exist. They will never question the poison in their own minds. But you did, and that has a cost. Spiritual awakening is not a comfortable process. Despite the sugar-coated image it's given in modern media or shallow self-help culture, awakening in its true form is a breakdown, a complete and often violent undoing of everything false within the self. It is not a retreat into comforting beliefs or pleasant fantasies, but rather an uncompromising confrontation with truth, with reality, and with one's own internal contradictions. For many, the process begins with a collapse. A personal collapse, a spiritual collapse, or even a full existential crisis. This collapse is not a failure. It is not an error. It is the natural consequence of a soul beginning to wake up in a world that has been constructed to keep it asleep. When one begins to realize that almost everything they've been taught is a distortion, a lie, or a mechanism of control, shock and pain are inevitable. The modern world is hostile to spiritual awakening. It is constructed in such a way that the very idea of looking within, asking deep questions, or seeking higher truths is ridiculed, pathologized, or worse, medicalized. Society teaches individuals to suppress all emotion, all pain, all natural inner rebellion. From childhood, people are told to accept suffering as normal, to hide their tears, to repress their grief, and to internalize guilt and fear as moral virtues. This pattern of suppression leads to the total desensitization of the human being. People become emotionally dead, spiritually amputated, and eventually incapable of genuine self-reflection. They survive in a zombified state, animated only by routines, screens, and distractions, while their soul suffocates in silence. Since the takeover of Christianity as a spiritual and cultural force, this pathology has been formalized. Misery, guilt, and emotional torment became sanctified. The suffering individual is presented as holy. Martyrdom is elevated above transformation. Self-flagellation is praised above spiritual power. The message is simple. To suffer is divine, and to be strong is heresy. This is not an accident. Misery fuels the slave systems of the world. It creates dependence, obedience, and spiritual paralysis. And when the soul begins to rebel against this condition, when the process of awakening begins, Modern systems provide two controlled outlets. One is to be numbed with medication, to suppress the symptoms of awakening until they implode in private, or else result in permanent sedation. The second is to explode destructively, to embrace ideologies of resentment and rage. The Abrahamic Jewish structure of world control depends on this dynamic. Whether through religion, culture, or ideology, their primary tool is to redirect the pain they have caused back upon the people themselves. They turn suffering into identity, trauma into culture, and victimhood into a lifestyle. In this way, not only is the population kept spiritually weak, but they are also conditioned to defend the very systems that destroy them. But this entire process can be interrupted, and that interruption is the true meaning of awakening. Spiritual awakening is not simply about learning new information or adopting a new belief. It is a transformation of the entire being. It involves grieving what was lost, what was false, what was corrupted. It involves facing one's own pain, not running from it, not medicating it, not turning it into politics, but standing in it fully until it burns clean. This is not poetic metaphor. This is spiritual physics. Awakening requires suffering. But this suffering is not an end in itself. It is a purification. The process is violent because the disease is deep. A person must go through their inner underworld, what the Egyptians called the duat, what the Greeks expressed through the myths of Hades and Catabasis, and what the Vedic texts described as the karmic purification through lifetimes of discipline. This is the fire through which falsehood is burned and the soul is revealed. The mythologies of all high civilizations reflect this. In ancient Egypt, the initiate entered the temple blindfolded and terrified, subjected to trials meant to break the ego and reveal the essence. In Greece, the Eleusinian mysteries revolved around descent into the underworld and ascent reborn. The hero's journey always requires death before rebirth, not physical death, but the death of illusion. In the Vedas, awakening is impossible without tapas, spiritual heat, self-inflicted for the purpose of refinement. This is what society today teaches you to avoid. It trains you to be fragile, to be soft, to fear pain and worship ignorance. This fear of discomfort is the primary barrier between the modern man and spiritual transformation. But pain will come either way. The question is not whether you will suffer. The question is whether your suffering will be meaningful. We are living in a time where collapse is accelerating. And in this moment, the only thing that can prevent complete destruction is awakening, but not a soft, commercialized awakening. A real one. The truth is, many who are going through this now feel alone. They feel mad. They feel broken. But they are not broken. They are being dismantled so they can be rebuilt in truth. They are not weak. They are being tested. And this test is ancient. It is the path every hero, every initiate, every sage has walked. And when you come through it, you will not be the same. You will not be a slave. You will not be a puppet of religion, politics, or trauma. You will be something new, something ancient. A human being reborn in alignment with divinity. But this cannot happen unless people are told the truth, unless they are taught how to suffer properly, how to transmute it, how to return to the divine through the fire of awakening. That is why education, spiritual education, is the most urgent duty of this era. We do not have unlimited time. The collective breakdown is underway, but it is not too late to reverse course. It begins with the individual, with you. If you are waking up, do not run, do not numb, do not burn down what's around you in hatred. Take your pain and put it through the forge. Let the fire cleanse you. Let the truth remake you. And in that moment, know this: you are not alone. The gods are watching. They are near. and they are waiting for you to rise. Deep within the structure of the soul, it remembers. It remembers that in ancient times, the gods were the first ones called in crisis. Not because they stopped the pain, but because they taught how to walk through it. Not because they prevented death, but because they taught the meaning of it. Not because they erased suffering, but because they turned it into transformation. This is where true spirituality often begins. Not in joy, but in despair. The soul that has been shattered finally becomes still. And in that stillness, something ancient speaks. For some, the awakening begins at rock bottom, when there is nowhere else to go, when the world has turned its back, when the systems of man have failed, and there is nothing left. A quiet light breaks through the darkness. That light is them, the gods. They come as whispers, as symbols, as synchronicities that begin to cluster with eerie precision. They come in dreams, in the sudden sense that there's more, in the ache to find meaning after loss. They do not come screaming. They come when the world is silent enough for you to finally hear them. And when they come, you realize something that changes everything. They were always there. They waited, patiently, lovingly, not as judges, but as teachers. Not as distant cosmic entities, but as the original family of the soul. The true spiritual fathers, mothers, brothers, and protectors. The living intelligences of truth, power, and beauty that still govern this world. They are not figments of imagination. They are not myth in the dismissive modern sense. They are real. And they do help. Not by doing the work for you, not by comforting you into paralysis, but by showing you what is possible, by reminding you who you were and who you can become. They help you remember that light exists, that truth is not just real, but alive, that this world, for all its darkness, still contains windows to the divine, that even if everything was taken from you, you can rise. You are not too broken. You are not too late. You are not too far gone. You are at the point where real life begins. And the gods, if you call them with sincerity and action, will answer. Not always with thunder, but with clarity, with strength, with presence. Because the truth is, they are the light, the purest, most sacred force of elevation and healing. Their beauty is not merely symbolic. It is real, experienced directly in ritual, in meditation, in guidance, in the visible transformation of the self. They are the opposite of this world's cruelty and noise. They are the clean air after a long suffocation. They are the structure in chaos. They are the warmth in despair. They are truth, animated. The first step in true spiritual awakening is not a trend, a lifestyle change, or a motivational mantra. The first step is knowledge. Not just any knowledge, but forbidden knowledge. The kind that was hunted for centuries. The kind that, until very recently, cost people their lives. This knowledge of the gods, this system of practice, meditation, power, and divine connection, was silenced for ages. The penalty for knowing it was death. The penalty for preserving it was exile, torture, or execution. Entire cultures collapsed without it. Whole generations passed away, disconnected from their spiritual roots like trees cut off from their water source. And the same applies to individual souls. Without this knowledge, people die long before their death, spiritually hollowed out, disconnected, misled. And now, it is here again, open, accessible, offered. The first real step in spiritual awakening is when a soul not only sees the pain of the world, but remembers there is another way. When the soul finds the path again. When the ancient blood inside responds to something higher. That moment, when you find this knowledge, when you hear its call and recognize it, is not coincidence. It is calling. It is your destiny returning. Some people come to this path by choice. Others are brought here by the pain of the world. Many arrive after suffering, after loss, after staring into the abyss and realizing there is no life left in the modern systems. That is when the soul becomes open. That is when the gods reach forward and offer their hand. And in that moment, you begin to awaken. But awakening without knowledge is like fire with no air. The flame cannot grow. The energy is there, but it needs structure, direction, initiation. This is why the gods have returned this inheritance to us. Because awakening is not complete until it is grounded in truth, in practice, in purpose.
In every man, there are latent faculties by means of which he can acquire for himself knowledge of the higher worlds. The mystic, theosophist, or Gnostic speaks of a soul world and a spirit world, which are, for him, just as real as the world which we see with our physical eyes, or touch with our physical hands. At every moment, his listener may say to himself, "What he speaks about, I too can learn, when I have developed within myself certain powers which today lie slumbering within me." There remains only the question as to how one has to commence in order to develop within oneself such faculties. For this, only those can give advice who have already developed such powers within themselves. As long as the human race has existed, there have always been schools in which those who possess these higher faculties gave instruction to those who were in search of them. Such are called the occult schools, and the instruction which is imparted therein is called esoteric science or occult teaching. Such a designation naturally awakens misunderstanding. He who hears it may be very easily misled into the belief that those who work in these schools desire to represent a special, privileged class, which arbitrarily withholds its knowledge from its fellow creatures. Indeed, he may even think that perhaps there is nothing really important behind such knowledge, for he is tempted to think that if it were a true knowledge, there would then be no need to make a secret about it. One might then communicate it publicly and open up its advantages to all men. Those who have been initiated into the nature of the occult knowledge are not in the least surprised that the uninitiated should so think. Only he who has to a certain degree experienced this initiation into the higher secrets of being can understand the secret of that initiation. But it may be asked, how then shall the uninitiated, considering the circumstances, develop any interest at all in this so-called occult knowledge? How and why ought they to search for something of whose nature they can form no idea? However, such a question is based upon an entirely erroneous conception of the real nature of occult knowledge. There is, in truth, no difference between occult knowledge and all the rest of man's knowledge and capacity. This occult knowledge is no more of a secret for the average man than writing is a secret to him who has never learned to read. And just as everyone who chooses the correct method may learn to write, so too can everyone who searches after the right way become a disciple and even a teacher. In only one respect are the conditions here different from those that apply to external thought activities. The possibility of acquiring the art of writing may be withheld from someone through poverty or through the state of civilization into which he has been born. But for the attainment of knowledge in the higher worlds, there is no obstacle for him who sincerely reaches for it. Many believe that one has to find, here or there, the masters of the higher knowledge in order to receive enlightenment from them. In the first place, he who strives earnestly after the higher knowledge need not be afraid of any difficulty or obstacle in his search for an initiate who shall be able to lead him into the profound secrets of the world. Everyone, on the contrary, may be certain that an initiate will find him out, under any circumstances, if there is in him an earnest and worthy endeavor to attain this knowledge. For it is a strict law amongst all initiates to withhold from no man the knowledge that is due to him. But there is an equally strict law that insists that no one shall receive any occult knowledge until he is worthy. And the more strictly he observes these two laws, the more perfect is an initiate. The order that embraces all initiates is surrounded, as it were, by a wall, and the two laws here mentioned form two strong principles by which the constituents of this wall are held together. You may live in close friendship with an initiate, yet this wall will separate him from you just as long as you have not become an initiate yourself. You may enjoy in the fullest sense the heart, the love of